useful. So we have a lot of people who are going to give very useful insight and contribution. So please lend them your ears and lend them your patience, give them your time, give them your full attention. I'll just quickly introduce our speakers today. We've got His Excellency Marwan with us today. And we've got Dr. Ali, who will be joining us shortly. He has a little bit of technical issues, but I'm sure he will join us shortly. Dr. Ali is the head of mission and the UAE ambassador to China. We've got Mr. Yi Wu, who is the commercial counselor of the Chinese consulate in Dubai, who has joined us today as well. We've got Mr. Muhammad Al Shuruk, who is the CEO of Sharjah FDI office. And we've got Mr. Ahmed, who is the head of commercial investment section of the Sharjah Economic Development Department. Mr. Frank Zhang, who is the GM of XCMG. So a very strong panel, lots of people, and I'm very sorry if I've murdered some of your names or mispronounced some of your names. I am not exactly the best, but faces are on there, and we were very much looking forward to this. So I am, while we wait for this, I've just got a quick announcement. While we wait for the ambassador to join us, I've just got a quick announcement which I will make in Mandarin. That's concerning simultaneous translation. That's for the benefit of our friends joining from China. 所以大家今天下午好，我们在这个非常感谢大家参与，还有感谢就是我们中国商会的支持。今天我们也有就是参战加入我们非常欢迎参战您加入。我们这里的话还有一个同步翻译，所以假如是在这个 Zoom 里头的话，在下面有一个选择，您可以选择窃听的话，可以听成中文，所以也有同步翻译。好。那我们现在这些，我们今天都有是很多有实力的一些人物来给我们讲说，所以我先把时间交给I will pass the time over now to let me see. All right. So His Excellency Marwan, would you mind starting off first by giving us some opening remarks while we wait for the ambassador? Would that be all right?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Daniel, for the introduction. Assalamu alaikum to all of you. Good morning to the people that are listening to us from the United Arab Emirates and this part of the world. And as you said, good afternoon for the guys in China, mainland China, and all around the east of Asia. It is a great honor for us to have such events that talks about trade relations, but also talks about how important the relationship between the United Arab Emirates and China. We are very happy to see how things are growing steadily, strengthening the relationship between the United Arab Emirates and China, and working together to support businessmen investing within the United Arab Emirates and primarily Sharjah, and also investors from the United Arab Emirates investing in China. What I can say is I would like to say a couple of words about Sharjah and about Shuruk. I represent Sharjah Investment and Development Authority, an entity that is responsible of attracting investors, creating joint ventures with investors, looking at different industries that are important for us to attract foreign investments to, but also developing projects where we develop projects into different sectors. We have developed a whole portfolio for Sharjah, investing into tourism, investing into healthcare, investing into recycling, investing into real estate, and different types of projects. We can say that Sharjah is one of the thriving Emirates that creates the United Arab Emirates. It has a very strong GDP. It has a very strong attraction of investment when it comes to the industrial sector. It is known as one of the most important educational hubs in the region. Sharjah is also known for its medium-sized and small-sized businesses. So it's the backbone of the industry of the United Arab Emirates. We, for example, in Shuruk, try to create joint ventures with investors from all around the globe. We have successfully created joint ventures into different sectors. And we can say to all of the Chinese investors that we are happy to venture into different investment opportunities, whether it's into recycling or whether it's into sustainability or whether it's into healthcare or even tourism. And we're looking at how the world have changed post-COVID. Before COVID, I would say we were looking at different industries. Post-COVID, many things have changed. The world has changed. And thankfully, the United Arab Emirates was one of the countries that managed to control this pandemic to a certain level, to reduce the impact on the economy, and now hopefully recovering in a better way, I would say. What we noticed in the past couple of weeks, that there is a new sectors like, for example, farming, whether it's vertical farming or aqua farming, is a thriving sector that we see. The healthcare sector was always a hot topic, but pharma is now a bigger topic that we would like to encourage investors to. And sustainability, looking at renewable energies and all of this, is another sector that we are looking at. I'm very happy to be one of the drivers in the economy of Sharjah, with our colleagues here, Muhammad promoting Sharjah internationally, and Ahmed making it easier for anyone to set up in Sharjah. So we are going to hear from all of us about how we can make a life of an investor in Sharjah a great one. Thank you all.
Thank you, His Excellency Marwan, and thank you today for hosting us today. I'm sure it's going to be a great event. Just before I proceed quickly, can I just check quickly if we have Dr. Ali, Ambassador to UAE, Ambassador to China. Do we have him with us, or has his technical difficulties been resolved? If not, we can still proceed, and we'll definitely make time for the ambassador, so that's not going to be a problem. Right. While we wait, it's my pleasure to also invite Mr. Yu, who is the commercial counselor of the Chinese consulate in Dubai. He has very kindly joined us and lent his support to the event as well. So without further ado, Mr. Yi. And so can we invite Mr. Yi to share a few words and share a few words to us? Thank you.
It's on mute, Your Excellency. It's on mute. We cannot hear
you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You hear me? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. 尊敬的马万阿勒瑟卡尔主席阁下，很高兴与您再次相聚在线上啊。尊敬的阿里扎西里大使阁下，女士们、先生们，大家上午好。今天我非常高兴，受中华人民共和国驻迪拜总领事李旭航先生委托，参加此次沙加中国线上商务会议。众所周知，今年以来，持续的新冠肺炎疫情给中资企业在内的在阿企业生产经营带来一定困难。沙加政府为此出台了一系列经济刺激计划和激励措施。举办此次沙加中国线上商务会议非常有意义，也非常有必要。希望通过此次政策解读，增强企业对各项政策的理解和把握，帮助企业纾困解难。近年来，随着两国领导人实现互访，中阿全面战略伙伴关系不断巩固深化。特别是2018年7月，习近平主席对阿联酋进行了历史性的成功访问，把两国关系提升到了历史最好时期，也为双方经贸合作提供了广阔空间。2019年，中阿双边贸易额接近500亿美元，同比增长6%。中国持续保持阿联酋第1大贸易伙伴地位，阿联酋也连续多年成为中国在西亚北非地区第2大贸易伙伴和第1大出口市场。因此，从长远看， 我们的企业在这里是大有可为的，困难只是暂时的。阿联酋联邦政府和沙迦政府致力于全面恢复经济和社会发展，并提出了后疫情时代一揽子支持举措，为企业生产经营提供了更多可能性。我们的这个中资企业要紧抓中阿友好的历史机遇，主动与本地相关政府机构加强协调沟通，用足用好政策红利和政治红利，力争取得有关政府机构对我们中资企业面临困难的理解和支持，找出化解不利影响、化危为机的办法。我们今天很高兴看到徐工集团中东公司的张兆松先生将和大家分享在疫情期间受益于沙迦政府优惠政策的经验做法。中资企业可以参考借鉴，继续融入到沙迦后疫情时代经济社会发展进程中。同时，我们也希望沙迦政府有关机构继续对中资企业的相关关切和具体诉求给予高度重视，为双方经贸合作提供更多机会，努力促成一批合作项目尽快落地，更好地体现我们双方良好合作的实际成果。最后，预祝此次线上会议圆满成功。谢谢。Shukran wa salamu alaikum。
非常感谢参战您给我们的提示，非常感谢参战。
谢谢，谢谢。
谢谢。Right. Thank you, Mr. Wu, for the commercial counselor for sharing with us his thoughts. And I now, as I foreshadowed earlier, we've got a very impressive panel. And without further ado, I would like to ask Mr. Mohammed El Sharak, who is the CEO of the Sharjah FDI office, to just give us an introduction of what you do and you know how businesses can benefit from your office.
Sure. Thank you, Daniel, for your moderation. Till now, you did not speak a lot as you promised, actually. We are waiting for you. Before I start, I would like to thank the Consulate of China for participating in this session, actually, and co-organizing this session with Invest in Sharjah. And I would also like to thank our esteemed panelists, His Excellency Mr. Marwan, my dear friend Mr. Ahmed Saif, and Mr. Zhang, also from XCMG, which is one of the all Chinese companies actually in Sharjah, which I also met in person, and I was impressed by the work they are doing in Sharjah and in the United Arab Emirates. Sharjah Invest in Sharjah, or Sharjah FDI office, is the office that is responsible of attracting different investments into the Emirate of Sharjah and help investors to know more about the investment climate in the Emirate of Sharjah. We do guide the investors on where to invest, how to invest, what is the best place for them in terms of legal setup as well, whether they should invest in Sharjah mainland through obtaining a trade license from Sharjah Economic Development Department, or we direct them to one of the 6 different free zones that we have in the Emirate of Sharjah. We have a very good relationship with China when it comes to the Emirate of Sharjah. Sharjah used to host China Commodities Fair from 1999. And also we used to have a China Mix, which is China permanent exhibition for different Chinese products here in the Emirate of Sharjah. We hope that this Chinese commodities fair come back again, definitely with the help of the help of the consulate in the UAE. We are ready, I mean, to work closely with them to bring back the Chinese permanent commodities fair and to work on different fairs as well for Chinese products in the Emirate of Sharjah. So if I talk about the investment climate of the Emirate of Sharjah, we have one international airport, we have 3 different seaports, a lot of Chinese shipping companies are calling to different Sharjah ports. We used to have one of the Chinese air passengers coming to Sharjah International Airport. We hope also to open a new direct flights between Sharjah and China. We have 6 different free zones, as I mentioned. We have 2 general free zones, which is Sharjah Airport International Free Zone, and we have a Hamriya Port Free Zone. We have the Sharjah Research and Technology Park, one of the projects that we are focusing on a lot currently. We have Sharjah Publishing City, we have Sharjah Media City. I think His Excellency, the Ambassador, just joined. Welcome, Your Excellency. I think it's a mute.
Go ahead with your presentation. Thank you so much. I'm listening to you all the time. Just I'm waiting for the entry to be possible with the technology advancement. Please continue. I will be chipping in later on. Please go ahead. Continue.
Sure. Thank you, Your Excellency. So we have 6 different free zones in the Emirate of Sharjah, as I mentioned, 2 general, and then we have the specialized free zones. So a lot of companies come to us as Sharjah FDI office to take advice on where is the best place for them to go, and we study their cases. And then we study also the legal structure that they want to have, and then accordingly we advise them on where is the best place to go and to set up. We have also recently launched a one-stop shop for all investors. It's called Sharjah Investor Services Center, and we gave it a small name, which is Saeed. Saeed is basically happy in Arabic. We want all the investors who are investing in Sharjah to be happy, not only by visiting our center, but by investing in Sharjah generally. So it's a one-stop shop. We give them the advice as a Sharjah FDI office, and then we direct them to Sharjah Investor Services Center, and we finalize all their government-related processes and procedures. So they don't have to go from one place to another to finalize their paperwork. We give them the advice, and then we finalize all their government-related papers under one roof. We have different services. We have the Sharjah Economic Development Service. We have the Notary Public for signing the MOAs and different contracts. We have also licensed one of the free zones, and I think this is the only place where you can find different types of licensing or obtain different types of licensing under one umbrella. So we do license for Sharjah Media City as well. We have different services for investors. Maybe this is good for the consulate once they have issues with companies in the United Arab Emirates. We have the Emirates identity department here, so we can print the ID cards. We can finalize the visa issues for all the Chinese companies that are registered in the UAE, the Chamber of Commerce, and then definitely the trade license. This is in a nutshell what we do. We also represent Sharjah in the international conferences and exhibitions. We go to China like 2 or 3 times each year. We have gone to many of the Chinese cities, and we have done roadshows there. Recently, we were in Shenzhen, Hong Kong. We went to Tianjin, to Ningxia. We have done roadshows in most of the Chinese cities. We will definitely not stop our activities. once airports are open, we will definitely be there and continue what we started and what needs to be done to help the Chinese companies to invest out of China. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon. Good afternoon, His Excellency Dr. Ali. Thank you for joining us. I think you were online. It's just some video issues, wasn't it? So thank you again very much. We are in the midst of running through the introduction of our speaker. So if you could give us the honor of sharing a few thoughts after we're done with the introduction, just before the panel, I'm sure everybody would love to hear from you. Would that be all right for you?
Sure, Daniel.
All right.
Thank you so much for your kind invitation, and it's really a great opportunity to be able to join you. Do you like me to share my thoughts now, or you want me to wait for later?
If it's all right with you, Dr. Ali, would it be all right for me to introduce Mr. Ahmed Said and also Mr. Frank, who will also be speaking, and then we have a panel session, and I'm sure everyone would love for you to hear from you before we start the panel. Would that be all right?
That would be my pleasure. First of all, really, it gives me really great pleasure to be able to speak with you this afternoon in Beijing, but still morning in UAE. I believe around 11:30 now. Mm-hmm. So let me start by to address Your Excellencies. Dear friends and colleagues, really a pleasure to be this time at this opportunity to be able to join you. The economic collaboration is set at the root of bilateral relations between the two friendly countries, the UAE and China. Last year, the UAE and China celebrated their 35th anniversary of bilateral relations between our nations. And during this time, trade between our countries has grown more than 800 times. Non-oil trade has reached more than 50 billion in 2019. And we can see more opportunities for long-term trade expansion, continuing the already positive upward trajectory we have journeyed on already. Our nations wants to continue to play an active role across the Belt and Road Initiative. The UAE was a founding member of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which is in line with the BRI's investments in sustainable infrastructure and with other productive sectors in Asia and around the world. The UAE aims to work in a mutual interest with China for this initiative. China and UAE are two countries that share a vision of a globalized world and of course, open economy. The UAE is a great believer in the Belt and Road Initiative, and it's deepening the trading ties with China to support its global success. For our country, China's Silk Road Fund has been financing infrastructure projects in the UAE to strengthen international industrial capacity cooperation between our two countries and working together hand in hand. The status of UAE-China relations is now robust and strong, weathering the storm of the global pandemic. As we come out of the pandemic, China will have an enthusiastic participation at, of course, forthcoming Dubai Expo next year. Chinese putting impressive, lantern-shaped pavilion. We'll see China showcasing one of the largest country pavilions on site. They will have the third biggest pavilion after UAE and Saudi Arabia. This symbolic of China's considerable presence in the UAE, as our nation has become recognized by China as an ideal location to do business. Not only location, but also our sound infrastructure overall, in terms of logistics, in terms of connectivity, and to do business. The Chinese community in the UAE has now exceeded 200,000 Chinese residents. This placed Chinese among the top community in the country. The number of Chinese projects in the UAE has grown to around, or could be more than 4,000, which are worth of more than 2 billion US dollars. There are more than 5,000 Chinese companies are well established in the country. So all sorts of opportunities are unfolding in the UAE. And all of this built on great support from both countries' leadership, but also overall built on trust, confidence, and of course, mutual interest. We are in an area of enhanced relations between our countries with an elevated economic relationship, as coined by President Xi Jinping during his visit to the UAE during summer 2018 as a comprehensive strategic partnership. Our nations have grand ambitions for 200 billion US dollars per year total trade by 2030. This may seem ambitious, but it is grounded in reality of a deepening relationship built on solid trust by both countries. The UAE is the largest recipient of foreign direct investment in the Middle East, and much of that is driven by China. There is deepening recognition of the UAE's robust benefits and opportunities for Chinese businesses as they increasingly expand their scope around the world. Of course, as my role as ambassador here, I invite you to join those who have already discovered these advantages, as both our nations continue our ambitious journey upward to flourish in an open and globalized world. I really thank you so much for such an opportunity, and I also great to see there is forthcoming from the US side to bring both countries closer and creating bridges of cooperation between our both countries. Daniel, thank you so for the opportunity, and I really wish all the best luck and success for both sides over here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ali, and thank you for gracing this event. We gracing this event with it's been a great honor to all of us. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. It would be a tough act to follow Dr. Ali, but I'm sure the next two speakers that I'm going to introduce will rise to the occasion. So can I invite Mr. Ahmed Saif, who is the head of commercial investment at the Sharjah Economic Development Department, to just introduce yourself and say a few words about what you do.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies. It's a pleasure to be here amongst great people, and obviously there isn't more I can add to what my colleagues have put, especially the amazing insight that we have gotten from His Excellency the Ambassador. But let me talk about where I work and what I do for a living. So what I do is I basically work in the Sharjah Economic Development Department. It's an organization that licenses and registers businesses. And at the same time, we provide commercial and consumer protection, as well as, regulating the market and applying federal laws. And all of that combined actually adds to the second part of economic development. And as of recently, the Sharjah SME Rawad, which basically is an organization that supports young and aspiring entrepreneurs, has been consolidated within the economic development department itself. So that's primarily what we do. And I guess that's in short, aside from attending these events and trying to promote and support our colleagues in Shuruq and Invest in Sharjah to attract investment to the Emirate of Sharjah, we actually do our own revisions and we do our own homework to self-improve so we can provide our services better. One of our most notable achievements is within the Emirate of Sharjah and probably in some parts of the UAE as well. We have been one of the first organizations to be 100% digitalized when it comes to the services we provide. We have adapted to the recent changes and to the paradigm shift to the digital economy and the electronic commerce. And obviously we try to revise the certain rules and regulations and try to provide a better understanding and a better infrastructure, legally speaking, for businesses to have a perfect investment climate to conduct their business on a day-to-day basis. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmad Saif, and thank you again for joining us today. And the last speaker I'll introduce is Mr. Frank Zhang, who is the General Manager of XCMG UAE. Zhang 总您好，请您做一下介绍。
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Your Excellency, Dr. Ali. Good morning, Mr. Wu. Good morning, everyone. My name is Frank Zhang. I'm from the Suzhou Construction Machinery Group. We are the biggest manufacturer and exporter for construction machinery, the heavy equipment in China. And we started our business earlier in 1990s in Sharjah and have a very known cooperation with the Sharjah government. And from the beginning, I think it's a very known and generally it's a very known and very happy journey. We doing our business in Sharjah. As we all know, XMG is the #1 manufacturer and exporter of construction machinery in China. And Sharjah is the industry center and the assembly point of different brands of construction machineries. So it's a natural choice that we select Sharjah as our base in UAE and even in the MENA region. During our development, Sharjah government provide us a very open, free, and convenient environment for us. They helped us a lot from registration, visa application, and all other aspects of the enterprises running. So I think it's lucky enough to stay here and doing business in Sharjah. I think lastly, with the full support of the Sharjah government launched during this difficult time, as we all know, it's the pandemic. I think we can overcome all the difficulties caused by the virus spread and work through these windy days. So let me say thanks for the organizer of this meeting to provide a very precious platform and a good opportunity to communicate with each other. Thank you all.
谢谢张总. Thank you, Mr. Zhang, for taking time to join us today. So we will now move into the panel discussion, and I think that's the value of it, rather than me talking. So a lot of people are going to share very useful insights. So how the format would proceed would be there would be 2 rounds of questions, and then so that everyone we get to hear equally from everyone who's joined us today. And the first, so just a little bit of background though, the Sharjah government has launched a series of stimulus plans and incentives to minimize the impact of COVID-19 for businesses. So I think this is a hot topic in town now. Everyone's talking about it, and the Sharjah government is taking charge, taking the lead and initiative in launching a series of stimulus plans. So the aim of this webinar is to help businesses better understand the government's stimulus and measures and how it works in practice. So to that, if I could address the first question to His Excellency Marwan, and it deals with Sharjah's finance department, which has initiated a 4 billion dirham liquidity support mechanism to help businesses. So the question is, what are the stimulus plans and incentives from the Sharjah government to help business tide through this difficult period? And what sectors and industries are covered under this initiative? So His Excellency, Mr. Marwan.
Sure. Thank you, Daniel. I would like to also thank His Excellency, our Ambassador, Dr. Ali, for actually supporting such initiatives and being part of this discussion. And this shows how the UAE government from its highest level is there to support its businessmen and whoever is investing in this country. And this shows really how close we are between the government and between the private sector. So I would like to especially thank him. He's been always a supporter for us whenever we are in China, promoting Sharjah to the Chinese investors, attending all those events, or even creating those webinars. So thank you, Your Excellency, for supporting us. And we are sure that with this support, we can achieve better results. So as we are part of the United Arab Emirates, the government of the United Arab Emirates created a great program. One of the first thing, before going to what Sharjah have done, the EU government have set up almost 100 billion dirhams to support all of the businesses. And this message was very clear that the banks are here also to support. We had a lot of issues with a lot of companies, but before the issues were raised, the UAE government had set 100 billion comprehensive economic support scheme, where they gave the central bank gave all of the banks within the United Arab Emirates this support, so they can support the businesses in within the United Arab Emirates. And what it showed that a lot of the businesses that were affected got this support, that to make them go through this pandemic. And the first 3 months was the toughest part, I would say, starting from March and onwards. And by that, every emirate within the United Arab Emirates creates its own program. So we found a program coming from Abu Dhabi, then Dubai, and Sharjah, Ras Al Khaimah, Ajman. Every emirate created a program that supported, whether it's an SME, whether it's a startup, or large companies. And I would say everyone within this pandemic has been affected. Some industries have been affected dramatically, like the tourism industry, some and the airline industry. Some have not been affected as much and maybe have benefited out of this, which is online businesses and the other businesses. So what we did within Sharjah, the Sharjah government created a 4 billion boost to liquidity. It tried to also support those banks, the Sharjah banks, to support the businesses that are in Sharjah. And we've been very transparent. Every investor that invested in Sharjah has got the support from the government of Sharjah. Some industries, as the tourism industries that were closed due to this pandemic, got a different support. And that's where we found that it is case by case rather than an industry by industry, rather than everyone will get support, because we need to support the really needed ones. The other thing is that within the executive council in Sharjah, the government had set 47 points of stimulus plans, and it went from seaports to retail to hospitality to healthcare. And those programs went into each and every sector within Sharjah that really needed that support. And what we noticed is that industries were faster to recover because of those stimulus plan. And we in Shuruq are one of those investors that have invested in the tourism sector, invested heavily in creating destination. And due to the fact that we were closed, we were financially affected. So what we noticed is that the government was there within the economic department in Sharjah, or whether it's the Sharjah Tourism Authority, or whether it's the government by itself, where they showed the support to that. And once the preventive health standards were created, we were back to open, and that recovery gave trust to a lot of visitors to come back and enjoy their time within those destinations, and we're not really worried as they were if we didn't set those programs. So I would say we had a great recovery, and we're going through that. And you will notice that the United Arab Emirates is one of the fastest recovered countries past the pandemic, I would say.
Thank you, His Excellency. And so the next question I have is for Mr. Mohammed Al Musharak, CEO of FDI office, Sharjah FDI office. I think in this climate now, everyone is quite concerned about how businesses can operate safely and efficiently. So this question has got two parts. First of all, is what services how can the Sharjah FDI office help support businesses so that they can operate safely, efficiently? And for companies that are interested in setting up new factories in Sharjah, how can the Sharjah FDI office support and help this initiative? Mr. Mohammed.
Sure, Daniel. Maybe before I answer your question, again, I would like to thank his ambassador once again for joining us today and supporting such initiatives. And this shows on how us as local governments are keen to support investors, and also from the federal government by such participation that we have seen from His Excellency. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. I mean, we at Invest in Sharjah during the pandemic, we were busy, maybe unlike other industries. We were busy helping companies to recover. We created a hotline for companies, those who wanted support from the government in terms of asking different questions and on how to be flexible to shift their businesses and activities. We got a lot of inquiries from businesses that wanted to shift their activities, especially those who are working in pharmaceuticals and chemicals and plastic manufacturing. A lot of them tried to shift to another, I would say, more activities that were required at the pandemic, especially the masks and the gloves and the chemicals and all of this. So in terms of rules and regulations, there are some restrictions definitely where these companies cannot change their activities without different level of approvals, whether these approvals are on local level from the Economic Development Department or Sharjah municipality, or some other federal approvals that are needed from the Ministry of Economy or the Ministry of Environment or the Ministry of Health. So we were the link between the investors and these different government authorities, local and federal, to try and help these investors. So also through our new initiative, which is Sharjah Investors Services Center, we created a hotline for those who wanted to still keep renewing their trade license or have any government service done. You know, a lot of, especially during the lockdown, a lot of the government entities were working remotely. So what we have done at the center, we created this hotline and we employed a lot of people who were going to the investors, to their offices, to their homes sometimes, to their places to collect all the documents needed for the renewals of their trade license and whatsoever, anything related to government entities. And the government also outsourced a lot of their services to centers such as Sharjah Investor Services Center. We provided a lot of information on the different stimulus packages that were announced by both federal and local government. So investors were always contacting us, asking on how can we benefit from the stimulus packages that were announced by the government, by the banks. So our role was to put them in touch with all the banks that were part of the stimulus package and to provide them with different government services. In terms of support that we are providing currently for the manufacturers, you know, we in Sharjah have different manufacturing projects going on currently. We have the Sharjah Industrial Oasis. We have our free zones, which already have different industrial projects. We have the Emirates Industrial City, which is again a giant manufacturing and industrial project going on. We meet our stakeholders regularly to try and support the manufacturers that are coming from different parts of the world, and especially from China. We know that a lot of manufacturers would come to this region nowadays to cater not only to the UAE, but from UAE to the GCC and to the whole MENA region. But what I would like to see, actually, we would like to see more companies coming to the region in advanced manufacturing and artificial intelligence. I know that China is now taking the lead in artificial intelligence and advanced manufacturing and drones manufacturing, for example. By having the research and technology park today, I think Sharjah can offer a lot to those technological companies that are based currently in China. We have the right infrastructure for them. We have the right rules and regulation for these companies to operate from Sharjah and UAE. 3D printing is something that we are also focusing on heavily, and we would like to see more Chinese player in this sector. Medtech, agrotech, these are the kind of industries that we are focusing on nowadays in Sharjah, and we are keen to see more companies, Chinese companies, coming into Sharjah into these different fields. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Mr. Ahmed, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the Sharjah Economic Department has launched a package, has rolled out a package of initiative and decisions that have been approved by the government of Sharjah. The core purpose of the package is to support government and private entities, as well as business sectors and individuals. So about these incentives, would you mind sharing with us a little bit more about how these incentives has been placed to support businesses given the current situation?
Well, basically, I'm actually contributing and adding to certain points that Mr. or His Excellency Mr. Marwan has spoken about. To spare people the details and the nooks and crannies about it, I'll just rather talk about the certain sectors that have been impacted. As the Economic Development Department, we are ultimately the organization that will issue your trade license for you, but that will only come at a certain point and based on your activities. So you have to actually go to certain other organizations that regulate certain activities. So when we talk about these certain incentives and these certain packages and these certain plans that we have come up with to support the private sector and to support businesses, especially during these trying times, we haven't done that on our own. We have done that with the full support and with discussing it with other compatriots in certain other sectors that actually help provide a good business environment. We have done as much as we can to support the businesses. Referring back to my first point, which is basically how we are fully digitalized, when this pandemic started and people started to work from home, social distancing, everything came to a halt. From the inside, we had a very good foundation. We had been fully digitalized. People can access all of our services wherever they are, whenever they are, at what time that they want. So we haven't impacted, which gave us more leeway to look into certain things and literally look into certain specific activities and not just certain sectors to see how we can support them. So we looked into a lot of things that really mattered. We have had discussions with the Sharjah Tourism Authority, the Sharjah Chamber of Commerce, even the Sharjah municipality to actually look at certain fees and certain approvals that come with a lot of businesses like tenancy contracts and things like that. We have had a lot of discussions with the private sector to actually see where they are suffering and what mechanisms need to be placed in order to support them during these trying times. And then ultimately we have gone back to one of the highest authorities in the Emirate of Sharjah, which is the Sharjah Executive Council, to provide a certain draft for the certain kind of supports and certain kind of incentives that we would like to provide for businesses in various sectors such as tourism, retail, logistics, especially when it comes to ports, as His Excellency Marwan has mentioned earlier, construction. All of these sectors that are considerably important have been supported in one way or another. And ultimately, with, as I've mentioned earlier, the recent addition to Sharjah SME, especially these people who are kind of not as resilient as many businesses are right now because they are in their starting stages, they have gotten a lot of support as well. So there has been no sector that has been untouched. there has been no size of business that hasn't been supported in these trying times, and we actually hope that we will reap the benefits of these incentives that have been in place, in the coming near future, if we haven't seen them already, as my colleagues have mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmad. And as you might know, law firms are notoriously like dinosaurs in this current age. They are so way behind the curve. So I think we need to learn a lot from being fully digitized from what you have done. So thank you for sharing that. Mr. Frank Zhang, I've got a question for you. And I think you've been a very experienced and seasoned businessman in Sharjah, and you're aware of the climate, the conducive, constructive environment of doing business in Sharjah. So could you share with us a little bit about your understanding of the government's initiatives that have been rolled out in Sharjah, and any thoughts that you might have about these initiatives?
Thank you, Daniel. First, please allow me say the thanks to the organizer of this meeting to provide us a very precious platform to communicate with each other. Regarding my understanding for the incentives of Sharjah government, firstly, I think it's very timely. Since the beginning of the pandemic of COVID-19, the government is so sensitive to the challenges caused by the virus spread and take these measures immediately. So it really helps the enterprises, especially the small companies, from the very beginning. Secondly, all these measures the government take, I think, is very effective because it points to the core of enterprises running, the cash flow. As we know, the widespread of the COVID-19 leaded to long-term lockdown and sometimes the shutdown of the companies. So many companies, from the company's view, many of them, the sales revenue dropped down sharply. So we need to seek all possibilities to reduce our costs. So with the help of these incentives launched by the Sharjah government, the small companies can balance our cash flow to survive and for a better development in the future. All these measures launched by Sharjah government, they reduces the enterprises running costs. So we can save this money for our employees to maintain these positions during this difficult time and to prepare, make a good preparation for the future development. So I think it's pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zhang. His Excellency Marwan, there is an ancient Chinese saying that in a time of danger and risk is also a time of opportunity. So His Excellency Marwan, what are the potential opportunities in such a time for private businesses in Sharjah?
Thank you, Daniel. This is an amazing question. You know, with challenges comes opportunities, and what we notice is that, for example, when we started this message about attracting investment with my colleague, His Excellency Muhammad Al-Musharraf, we spoke first of all about attracting investment in tourism, attracting investment in logistics, attracting investments into healthcare. Did it change after COVID? And what are the challenges? What are the opportunities? Well, what we notice is that after COVID, countries were closed off. So they were depending on themselves, which means that we have to look at, can we survive by ourselves? What are the opportunities that are coming up due to the COVID? What have we learned about food security, for example, as one of those sectors? So what we noticed is that we were looking within our economy. How can we survive and how long can we survive? So with that came a lot of other sectors that I've mentioned, which one of them is food security. If we looked at vertical farming or aqua farming, this was not really a sector that we were promoting within Sharjah. Maybe the United Arab Emirates have a couple of farms when it comes to vertical farming and hydroponics, but it was never a hot topic within Sharjah's objective and initiative. So when COVID had hit us, this sector became a hot topic. So we started promoting how can Sharjah play a major role, and how can the United Arab Emirates in general can play a major role in becoming a center for innovation, a center for technology into vertical farming, into aqua farming. And so we have been having a lot of discussions on how can we, first of all, support the investor that invested into this sector, but also how can we promote them and how can we support them throughout the UAE, and how can we encourage more of the investors to come and invest within this sector. So in Sharjah, we have two companies that are doing exceptionally well. One is called Vegitech, the other one is called Thimar Al Imarat. They are all into vertical farming. They use different technologies from around the world, and I'm sure we have a lot of technologies from China that we can use within this industry. When you talk about vertical farming, we talk about LED lights, and most of those LED lights would come from China. China is so advanced in this technology that we can benefit out of it. So this is a call to Chinese companies when it comes to vertical farming, that UAE is a growing market. UAE has a huge potential. We have 9 million people, but we have the most advanced seaports. We can connect you to the whole world. We have the most advanced network when it comes to airline industry. So from the UAE, we used to export only oil. We're not only exporting oil anymore. We can export more vegetables, then we can benefit financially from this sector. Aqua farming is another sector. We noticed that a lot of the fish that come to the UAE is actually imported. So this is another industry for us to grow. And I'm sure I visited Tianjin, I visited Hawaii, and saw how advanced Hawaii is when it comes to AI, when it comes to fish farming, land-based fish farming or water-based fish farming. And I believe this is another call for companies, whether it's Hawaii or other Chinese companies, that the UAE is so focused on vertical farming and fish farming that we are here open. We have Sharjah Research and Technology Park and Innovation that is there to create a base for Chinese companies to set up in Sharjah and to venture into this industries. So for me, these are two hot topics. Other than that, we have solar panels. We would like to encourage companies from China to come and establish themselves as manufacturing, not only retail and selling, but to manufacture it in Sharjah, to sell it throughout the region here, which is the GCC region and the MENA region. And the last thing is robotics. China is so advanced. I've been to Baidu, I've been to many companies in China. You're so advanced when it comes to robotics. So this is an opportunity for us to merge those companies with our universities, whether it's the American University in Sharjah or the Sharjah University or the other universities within the Emirates, to benefit from this technology. How can we merge the minds that are in the Arab world within Sharjah and the United Arab Emirates with the technology that's coming from China? So a lot of things to talk about, and I think AI is another thing, and cybersecurity is another thing. So I believe even His Excellency Dr. Ali can also give us a couple of remarks about how can we merge between technologies in China and the minds that we have in the Arab world. So this is just in a nutshell what post-COVID showed us about the world and how it's changing.
Thank you, Mr. Marwan. And I'm really excited to see all the various angles that you've explored and how they would, come to fruition here in Sharjah and in the UAE. Mr. Muhammad, you mentioned earlier this one-stop shop, Said, and I remember you saying Said means happiness. So I'm really excited about this. And can you share with us a little bit more about this one-stop shop service and how Said can offer, what services Said offers to businesses?
Sure, thank you again, Daniel. Basically, the idea of launching Said came is that we want to provide an exceptional services for the investors that come to the Emirate of Sharjah. So we came up with this idea to have a one-stop shop, a luxurious one-stop shop actually, where we have most of the government departments under one umbrella. And what makes this place unique is not only it's a luxurious place, but the experience that we provide to the investor is also exceptional. Where you enter the center, you have a seat in one of our lounges, and one of our employees actually come to you. They ask you what service you want to have, and then we have a back office or a back end, where we do all the processes for you. For example, if you have 2 or 3 transactions, one with the let's say Ministry of Labor, one with the Economic Development Department, and one with Sharjah Municipality. you will be interacting with one employee only, who will take the papers from you and will go to the back office, and only one employee will process the three different transactions. This definitely makes the process of doing business in the Emirate of Sharjah much easier, much faster as well. And this is what the investors are looking for today. They don't want to go to a place where there are a lot of bureaucratical barriers, where they have to jump from one place to another place. The rules and regulations are not clear. They go to different PRO offices or to different consultants. By creating, first of all, Sharjah FDI office, who give the right advice to the investors, and then by creating such a center where you go and finalize all your process for setting up under one roof, this is something exceptional, I think, and you don't see everywhere. And the other point, we wanted also to show that we in Sharjah are open for different kinds of partnerships, especially PPP, the public and private partnership. So this is a good example where a public-private partnership is happening. We are partnering up with one of the best service providers in the private sector in terms of investor services, who are managing the back end of this service. So there are a couple of messages we wanted to send behind launching this. The first one would definitely be serving the investors who come and invest in the Emirate of Sharjah, providing them with the world-class services. We have also a small coffee shop that offers the best coffee in Sharjah. This is an open invitation to all of you, His Excellency. Definitely, when you will be back to the UAE also, we would love you to come and see the center as well. And we would also like the commercial counselor to see what we have done in terms of serving the investors in the Emirate of Sharjah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. And yeah, I'll definitely take up your offer for coffee one day. And this is such a refreshing and business-friendly initiative. And I'm really sure this is going to be a game changer for a lot of businesses, especially those who are new entrants to the market. This is definitely going to be a game changer. Moving on to Mr. Ahmed Saif. I know you've got your pulse on the economy. And you work very closely with companies, so you have a very clear picture and understanding. Would you mind sharing with us a little bit more about Sharjah's economy and any special features that you would like to highlight to the audience here today?
I have had 2 points that I wanted to shed light on, but also I like to, they always say that, the early bird catches the worm, but, the second mouse always gets the cheese. So I'm just going to follow up on what Mr. Marwan has said on certain points, but after discussing the certain things I would like to talk about first. To start off, the Emirate of Sharjah sets itself apart from the other Emirates, being the cultural and, educational hub of the UAE. It doesn't fall short when it comes to business, and it certainly sets a certain standard when it comes to the industrial sector. One whole emirate could account for a third of the entire UAE's industrial sector, and that is a feat we are very proud of, and we place that, everywhere we go in the world. When you talk about the industrial sector, you have about 33 individual industrial areas, geographically speaking. And when it comes to, the actual amount of, factories and manufacturing houses, you're talking about over 2,400, industrial licenses operating, or industrial, institutes operating in the Emirate of Sharjah itself. And that's not counting the ones in the free zones, such as, the ones in the Hamriya free zone and, the safe zone, the Sharjah International Airport free zone. There is, it accounts for, 3% of Sharjah's GDP. Which isn't, sorry, it's a 3% increase, obviously, but it accounts for 16% of Sharjah's entire GDP, which was around 220 billion in 2019. The other thing that I wanted to shed light on is how, you know, the entire world, and specifically the UAE, has been adopting, you know, and adapting to the digital economy, and providing certain rules and regulations and placing infrastructure, whether it's physical or legal, to cater for businesses to come and practice in this certain sector. And when it comes to the Emirate of Sharjah, there has been a 130% increase in licenses operating in e-business. Now that percentage is really huge, and you know, the amount of sales that occur through e-businesses are increasing, or are expecting to increase, you know, 23% up until 2020, and I'm sure that that figure is going to go up. Now, to touch on to add a few points to His Excellency Mr. Marwan Sarkal, when it comes to food security, you know, when you have a lot of free time on your hands, you tend to look inwards, and you know, you do a lot of self-reflecting, and you notice that there are a lot of things that you haven't been seeing when it comes to the Emirate of Sharjah, especially when it comes to food security. We have around 110 factories and manufacturing houses that literally delve into the business of food and drinks. That's it. You know, aside from the other factories and the other manufacturing institutes in the free zones and everything, 400 of these businesses, 400 of these manufacturing operating institutes export, you know, around the world. The export value has been around, well, almost 1 billion dirhams in 2018 and 2019, and it's expected, even in the lights of the recent events that have been happening with regards to, you know, the pandemic, it's expected to reach about 1.5 billion dirhams when it comes to just exporting food products. Now, let's say, you know, we decided that this pandemic is going to last longer. We actually are secure when it comes to food security. You know, when it comes to agriculture as well, we have reached about 18,000 tons of fish being fished, you know, in the Emirate of Sharjah only. You know what I mean? We have about over 80,000, you know, individual plants here, irrespective of you know, the different varieties, whether they're palm trees or whether. But in the agricultural sector, they actually produce almost 600 million dirhams worth of produce. You know, let alone the amount of tonnage and the things that we actually have to export. When it comes to livestock, we have reached over 320,000 individual livestock, whether they're camels, cows, or goats, or whatever you may call it. So we do have, you know, a lot of things that play to our advantage, and I highly encourage, you know, investors to look into these things and actually jump on this train, because you will benefit a lot out of it. And I guess that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Mr. Frank, I think, Mr. Frank Zhang, we know that you've been operating for a long time now in Sharjah, and you're very familiar with the environment. I'm sure the audience are very interested to hear your experience as well in respect of doing business in Sharjah. So could you please share some thoughts about doing business in Sharjah?
Good morning. Thank you, Daniel. For my experience of doing business in Sharjah, since we began our business in early 1990s, so it's more than 20 years we have been in Sharjah. So generally, it's a very long and very happy journey. As we all know, XMG, my company, is the #1 manufacturer and exporter for the heavy equipment in China. And Sharjah is the industry and industry center and assembly point of different brand of construction machineries. So in the initial stage, it's a natural choice. We selected Sharjah as our base in UAE and in the MENA area. And during our development, it's more than 25 years, the Sharjah government provided us a very free, open, and convenient environment for us to doing business in here and in UAE. They helps us a lot from all aspects of enterprises running, from the license registration, for the visa application and other things. So I think generally it's very lucky, and we are very happy to stay here in Sharjah. lastly, with the full support of the Sharjah government launched for the COVID-19, I think we can overcome all the difficulties caused by the virus spread. And lastly, let me thanks again for the organizer of this meeting and wish all of you in good health. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zhang. And thank you everyone for sharing. I see that there is actually quite a lively chat going on the Q&A. Unfortunately, I think we wouldn't have time and you know, we want to keep the good things short, but be rest assured that your questions will be picked up. You would see that the host of this meeting is in, and there is also a person called Diana Ma who is in. So please direct any queries you have, and I'm sure they'll be happy to direct those queries to the relevant department. And I see yes, and I think it's only right that our ambassador, Dr. Ali, has the last word on this. So, Dr. Ali.
Thank you, Daniel. I will leave the last words to you. I want to chip in a little bit and to share in certain points. I was listening carefully to the discussion, which I found it quite richening. I just want to encourage my colleagues from Sharjah investments, as there are a lot of opportunities and there are a lot of interest from our fellow Chinese who are, they look at the UAE as a model country to work with in Middle East and North Africa. Again, there has been, in terms of total China's export to Middle East and North Africa, around 60% of the export of Chinese export goes through our ports, which is very positive sign. So the numbers speak itself. However, there are a lot of opportunities, and the leadership of both countries are very supportive. They see they are putting a lot of a great platform that both companies and both institutions can work together where it can be added value. Of course, now the vision or the way to move forward, or we call it post-COVID-19, there will be more focus in certain areas, which is really of important. I believe during the discussion you have touched on them, most of you, concerning advancing technology, artificial intelligence, food security, manufacturing, but more in technology focus will add great value. So the way thinking forward, it will be more of added value business for all involved in that area. So I meet every day in my business over here, different companies engaged on, you name it, in technology and even technology research advancements. I heard from His Excellency Marwan, there's an opportunity area here. Food security, I'm very impressed to see how advanced food security in the Emirates of Sharjah and in the UAE also. So of course, there is an opportunity to add to it more technological advancement, as the Chinese over here, farming and plantation, it's their bread and butter. This is the core of how they have started their opening up of their economy. I don't want to take a lot of your time, but I'm really encouraged to see such an opportunity from Emirate of Sharjah, and this is a great progress. And here the UAE Embassy in Beijing, please, we are at your disposal. We are very business focused over here. I'm coming from the business itself, so I want to drive the business relationship even further. UAE is the #1 partner to China. This is not a music we want to play all the time. We want to continue to do it, and we want to move even further than that. So with your motivation, with the encouragement of our friends and fellow Chinese, I'm very positive we will reach even the moon together. We are there. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency, Dr. Ali. You are a very tough act to follow, so I wouldn't endeavor to say anything more than what you and all the other speakers have already touched on, and it's very valuable. And I think before we sign off, I think it's only right for me to offer my thanks to His Excellency Marwan, the host. Thank you for organizing such an awesome event. Thank you, Mr. Yu. 参战，谢谢您今天抽空参加。Thank you, Mr. Muhammad Al-Sharat. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Ahmed Said. And thank you, Mr. Zhang. 谢谢张总. Thank you all for your time. And again, if there are queries, please do not hesitate to reach out. I think His Excellency, Mr. Marwan, would you like to say a few words before we sign out?
Yes, I would like to thank you, Daniel, for this amazing session. I think we have covered a lot of topics. I would like to exceptionally thank His Excellency, our ambassador, Dr. Ali, for actually tuning in with us and being a big supporter to strengthen the relationship between China and the United Arab Emirates. I would like to also thank His Excellency, Mr. Yi, who the Consul General in Dubai from China, for being here, supporting us, and showing how important it is to support. I would like to also thank you, exceptionally, Daniel, to actually be an excellent moderator to moderate the session, and Mr. Frank for being a big supporter to Sharjah and investing in Sharjah and exporting products from Sharjah to the world. And this is something that we use, as he's our ambassador, to promote the Chinese investing here. And at the end, also, I would like to ask to thank my colleagues, Mr. Ahmed Saif bin Saad from the Sharjah Economic Department, for being part of this session and always enlightening us with information about Sharjah and doing business. And at the end, I would like to thank my colleague, His Excellency Mohammed Al-Musharraf, heading the Sharjah FDI office. He's usually on the plane and not on the ground. He's usually somewhere around the world every other week, and him and his team are doing a great job in promoting Sharjah. So at the end, we all work together to promote our businesses, our trade, and strengthening our relationship. We are here all to benefit each other and to make our places a better place to live, invest, and grow our families. So thank you all for being part of this discussion, and hopefully we're going to meet again and again. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So I think this brings an end to the session. I think everyone's free to log off now. And if there are queries, please direct them to Ms. Ma, who will then direct them to the relevant department. Thank you again, everyone, for joining in China and in the UAE.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody. 谢谢. Thank you.
谢谢。